very good morning and welcome to all of you. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to introduce today before you our revered speaker, Apj Brahmavihari Swami of the Babs Institute. Swamiji is one of the 1100 sadhus at the Babs Swaminarayan Sanstha that conducts over 160 humanitarian activities worldwide. Babs is led by His Holiness Swami Mahant Maharaj, a highly respected, learned and visionary guru. Swamiji grew up in the UK, was a top scholar and was invited to Oxford for medicine. However, he preferred to leave that opportunity and came to India to become a sadhu at the hands of His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj. From that young age, he has been part of the core creative teams, and all of you that have seen the wonderful Akshardhams in Gandhinagar, Delhi, and the biggest Hindu temple in Robbinsville, New Jersey in the United States, Swamiji has been a part of the core team for all of those, and he has also been on the team for the Mandir in London, which has been awarded 4 mentions in the Guinness Book of World Records. Swamiji is currently overseeing the historic project of the first traditional Hindu mandir in the Middle East being built in Abu Dhabi, and it is a great matter of pride and honor for all of us. Swami has been always an accomplished speaker, a thought-provoking international orator, and has addressed global and national gatherings and conferences, including renowned management school events, associations, educational, medical, legal, and scientific conferences and seminars. Swami was invited to address the global conference of the Human Fraternity at Abu Dhabi, attended by more than 700 religious leaders from across the world, including His Holiness Pope Francis. Swami has also been awarded an honorary PhD by the Gujarat University for his tremendous contribution. We are indeed delighted and honored to have Swami Apj Brahmavihari Ji come and address us at our conference this morning on the subject of spirituality. I would just request to play a short video for Swamiji, and then I would invite Swami Apj Brahmaviharidas to come and address the gathering.
Having grown up in Leicester, UK, Brahmaviharidas Swami was initiated as a sadhu by Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1981. Since then, he has been part of the core creative team of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha and played a leading role in the creation of Swaminarayan Akshardham complexes in Gandhinagar and New Delhi in India, as well as the upcoming Swaminarayan Akshardham in North America. Currently, he is overseeing the historic project of the first traditional Hindu mandir in the Middle East, being built in Abu Dhabi. Brahmaviharidas Swami also oversees the global outreach work of BAPS, and in that capacity has interacted with religious, national and community leaders from around the world. He is an accomplished and sought-after speaker who has spoken in international seminars and conferences around the world, inspiring leaders, scientists, students and youth through his insightful and practical talks infused by his deep study of global cultures, histories and philosophies. For his contributions to social and spiritual upliftment, he has been awarded an honorary PhD from Gujarat University.
Purnam पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवाननी जय अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय राधा कृष्ण देवनी जय सियावर रामचंद्र भगवाननी जय उमापति महादेवनी जय गुरु हरि प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय गुरु हरि महन स्वामी महाराजनी जय In the divine presence of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, in the equally divine presence of all the avatars and spiritual founders of world religions and world philosophies, in the most revered presence of my Guru Hari Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Mahan Swami Maharaj, and in the most esteemed presence of all the organizers of this corporate connections, this special conference that we are having this morning, and all the speakers and all the people who are joining today to enlighten all the listeners. One of the greatest ideas that the world has infused our civilization with are not just inventions and developments and creations, but one idea that really sustains everything that we see, hear, and feel is the idea of spirituality. Let me go straight into the point, because there's no point in beating about the bush and also walking in the woods. Because I personally believe that all of you who have joined in are looking for something extra that can help you become far more successful and better at what you are doing. So one thing we should bear before our minds when we talk about the need of spirituality in our daily lives. There's an age-old debate, whether you ask us or not, whether you are free enough to express your voices or not. But as long as we have an intellect, there is an age-old debate that has been going on ever since creation began. Sometimes it comes to the fore and sometimes it goes into the backbenches. But this debate is whether spirituality or religion is a need or is it a weed? Need is something that nourishes you, and a weed is something that saps you, takes away the energy. Many times people feel, and people also discuss, that all the chaos and all the divisions and all the small differences that we see have been generated in the name of religion or spirituality. Because your religion may be different, your spiritual ways may be different, and somebody else's may be different. So much of the chaos that we see, this is a point of discussion, and coming from a religious man, I think you will appreciate what I am discussing about. Well, that point of discussion can be in some other lecture, because I don't want to delve upon that. But we should touch that idea, and perhaps this small example will put our questions to rest. In this debate, the issue was that there were two friends. One was a theist and the other was an atheist. Technically, each one of us is a theist, believes in God at some point in a day, And even the great believers, some point in a day, they feel God's not listening to my prayer, so they become atheist in some point of a day. So to brand somebody as a theist or an atheist is not also appropriate, because it's a fluid condition where we suddenly believe a lot in God and sometimes we don't believe in God at all. So there were two close friends, and one was a believer and one was a non-believer. So as both of them were walking, the non-believer started taking a dig at the believer and said that, how long has God been on this earth? And the believer says, what do you mean? He said, but how long the idea of God, how long have religions been on this earth? And the believer very quietly, humbly said, for thousands and thousands of years. But suddenly the non-believer tells him, well, if for thousands and thousands of years we've had religions, we have the idea of God, we talk about spirituality, then why are there on this earth wars? Why is there superstition? Why is there hate? Why do we still become jealous? Why are there corruptions and all the wrong things like crime, terrorism? Why does it all exist if religion has been existing on this earth for so long? What use is God and what use are religions? And what use is spirituality if all these continue to exist? At that moment, the believer had no answer, so he was quietly, because they were friends, they were still walking together, but complete silent. After a few streets, suddenly they saw a puddle of water full of mud, and children were playing in that muddy water, and all of them were completely dirty from head to toe. That's when quietly the believer, the religious boy, turned to his friend who was a non-believer, and he said, by the way, how long have we had soap on this earth? When was soap invented? His friend said, well, soap was invented by the Phoenicians. If you look at the history of soap, soap was invented by the Phoenicians earlier on, and it has been in use for thousands of years. So the non-believer said that soap has been on this earth for more than 4,000 years. So the believer says that if soap has been on this earth for 4,000 years, why are these boys dirty? The non-believer said, well, but they are not using it. He said, exactly. The world is not using spirituality in the way it should be used. That's why wars, crime, hate, disturbances persist. If the whole world saw the perspective of spirituality and the way it should be used, we would have a much more peaceful world. We would have a much more developed world. So the idea is not, is spirituality needed or not? Is spirituality being used or abused? Is it being used in the right way? Do we hide behind the rituals and the names of religion? Do we hide within our houses of worship? Do we hide behind a veneer of seeming spiritual, and yet in our heart we are not? Just as you may have a library of books, but if you don't use them, you still remain dull and ignorant. You may have a whole pharmacy of medicines, but if you do not have the knowledge of which to take, when to take, and how much to take, you will never become healthy. It's not about how much spirituality you see or have, it's how much you use for yourself. So the idea for all the listeners who are young, dynamic, and who want to make a difference, whether it's in your corporate world, whether it's in your family world, whether it's in any world, it's how much you use, how much you personalize, how much you actually customize for your own life. That's the secret. So once again, whether spirituality is a need or a weed, if you approach it as a debate or a discussion, you'll get nowhere. But if you approach it with an idea of exploration, you will arrive somewhere. It is on these lines that Dr. Apj Abdul Kalam, one of the finest scientists India has produced, and one of the most compassionate human beings that I have personally known. Dr. Apj Abdul Kalam, not just he was a leader, not just a great scientist who invented the hovercraft or our missiles, or the project leader who oversaw the detonation of India's first atomic bomb. He became the chief scientific advisor to the Prime Minister of India and also the chief of DRDO. But Dr. Apj Abdul Kalam, in the latter part of his life, he did approach the topic of spirituality with the mind of an explorer. Sometimes we look at things with opinionated minds, and we are not open to change or open to thinking. I remember, and I was present, it's my personal experience that I'm relating to each one of you, that in 2001, Dr. Kalam, he came to His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj, our spiritual head, who is the inspirer of the Akshardhams and the wonderful humanitarian projects you see across the world, which are being conducted by BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. Pramukh Swami is a very humble sadhu. On one end, Dr. Kalam was a scientist, Pramukh Swami Maharaj is a spiritual leader. Dr. Kalam was a profound Muslim and Pramukh Swami Maharaj a spiritual Hindu leader. It was said that he had been awarded honorary PhDs from almost 46 universities of the world, and from education size, Pramukh Swami Maharaj had hardly cleared his 7th standard. So in this way, what a unique meeting that Dr. Kalam could not understand a word of Gujarati and Pramukh Swami could not speak a word of English. On every point, they were diametrical, but it did not stop them transcending the divisions that divided them to become the best of friends. I remember as a translator between that conversation, 2001, just months before he became the president, he came with a special blueprint of India 2020. How prophetic. I'm talking about this in 2021. And what a year 2020 the whole world has had. And this happened in 2001. And Dr. Kalam came with a beautiful blueprint. And he said to Pramukh Swami that I have a vision of India 2020. And it was very fascinating for all of us young sadhus who were sitting around. And then he said that I, along with the 500 greatest thinkers of India from every profession and every field, he was an inclusive leader. You know, sometimes when accountants think they only get accountants together, managers together, you have special conferences just for the entrepreneurs or the corporates. We don't think about a holistic life, because the moment you come out of your factory or an office, you have to be a father, a husband, you have to be a son, you have to be a son-in-law, you have to be a neighbor, you have to be so many things that which you are not in the corporate office. So Dr. Kalam came with a plan that he had actually met 500 great thinkers from fields as different or as varying as, let's say, finance, let's say management, architecture, engineering, then army, then sadhus. He had actually taken people even from the slums, but who were thinkers. So he had brought 500 different people to think about in which 5 fields India should develop by 2020 to become a great nation. Mind his words, a great nation, not just a developed nation. And before His Holiness Pramukh Swami, for almost 1 hour, he laid bare the blueprint. He said, you know, Your Holiness, I believe that India should develop in the field of, now listen carefully, and how prophetic. India should develop in the field of health and education. That's number 1, health and education. Second, he said, infrastructure, meaning the roads, the buildings, the electricities, everything that we have that drives us, India should develop into that. The third, he said, information technology and communication. That is the field that India should develop in. The fourth, he said, agriculture. because food and organic food would be the most important fuel for life. And the fifth, he said, critical technology. Technologies, he identified technologies like nanotechnology, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and then he said, creation of vaccines. Imagine, in 2001, he's talking about India 2020. And just imagine at this moment, okay, once I take you through, all these ideas were laid before His Holiness Pramukh Swami, and I was translating from English to Gujarati. How difficult it could be, but yes, I was struggling and I was translating. Looking at everything, Pramukh Swami Maharaj said in a simple way that there is something missing. I was really shocked. When somebody from the heights of Dr. Kalam comes to you with a suggestion, I don't think you and me are equipped to even give a smaller whisper of a suggestion. How can we? And when he emphasizes that 500 thinkers have been thinking for a whole year, and they have come to a conclusion of these 5 areas, do you think all of us and all you listeners in hundreds and thousands, would you be able to combine and come back and say, no, there's something missing? But very innocently, Pramukh Swami said that, tell Dr. Kalam that something is missing. I was a little hesitant. And I said, Sahib, that Pramukh Swami is saying that something is missing. Kain khutesh hai. Kalam very curiously, because nobody had told him that something was missing, he said, Swamiji, what is it? Pramukh Swami said, add a 6th dimension, faith in God. See, for a believer, this is like climbing Mount Everest. This is like a summit. You feel, wow, great. But for a non-believer, this is completely like a lightning out of the blue. That what development of a nation, and you're talking about 5 scientific ideas, tangible ideas, and this 6th, faith in God, which is completely intangible, spirituality, which is completely invisible. How can the two actually collaborate? And how does it make a difference? So Kalam had the eyes of suspicion. And he looked at His Holiness Pramukh Swami and said, but Swamiji, and then Pramukh Swami explained, now I just request each one of you who are thinkers, the answers will come from these answers. Each one of you who are thinkers, just think what Pramukh Swami Maharaj said. He justified what he said, and he explained and reasoned. He said, Dr. Kalam, the worth of a nation cannot be evaluated just by technology, education, just by the types of roads and infrastructure you have. The worth of a nation has to be evaluated by the types of human beings that it generates. You must understand that a country should be measured not by the roads or the buildings or the GDP and GNP. Yes, that's the easy way that we measure. But by the quality, the caliber, and the character of the human beings. In the long run, you measure your friends by how they are, not just by the degrees and the money they have. No, you don't. In your own family, you measure your relationships not by the bungalows and the profession that they profess, but how good a person is. So that's why Dr. Kalam said, yes, he agreed. He said, a country cannot be evaluated even if it has the first-rate technology and the first-grade infrastructure, but if it has third-rate human beings, the country is not a developed or a great nation. What good is a country that is economically successful, but it just pushes its weight around and creates wars and divisions in the world? That's not the country we value or we esteem. So Pramukh Swami said that what about developing people? We focus on developing environment, we focus on developing houses. We have created a world that we always work on the new versions of what? Cars, new versions of mobile phones, the new versions of computers, the new versions of applications. But what about the new versions of human beings? Nobody really bothers. We are the product of not our products, but our products actually redesign us. And I think we should understand that. Pramukh Swami said that a human being can only be developed by his or her moral development and spiritual development, because those are the personal things that influence us. And let's seriously think about that. So that's why Dr. Kalam agreed at that time to say it out in public, which he has written in his book Transcendence, that after I got this intuition and inspiration from His Holiness Pramukh Swami, even as the President of India, wherever he went, he mentioned this, that spiritual development of a nation is equally important as the industrial development, the financial development, and also the well-being of a nation. Hence, our question whether spirituality is a need or not has already been sufficiently answered. Till now, nobody paid attention to spirituality because we created a world of visibles and tangibles, something that we could measure. While spirituality remains invisible, intangible, so we never really discussed or touched. But now that we have created a world which is more virtual than real, look at this conference, come on. The conference itself is virtual, and we are talking about reality. We are talking about health. We are talking about wealth. We are talking about everything that we want physically and all virtually. And I believe the most important topic that qualifies here is spirituality, because it's a combination between real and virtual. And that's what we see in this world. That once we start talking about the deeper values of life, we understand that something is more important than just quantity. Till now, in your profession, in factories and industries, you've always been told that flood the world with your product. When you flood it, people will buy it, and it will turn into profits. Then when everybody started flooding everything, quality became more important than quantity. And every factory will have quality controller. But let me take you a step further. Something more than quality is what? Recently, I had gone down to the US and I went to the office of Salesforce to meet some of the most important people who were actually contributing to whatever good work we were doing. And there, surprisingly, I met an equality officer. I said, what's an equality officer? And they explained to me, Your Holiness, it's very important that we were all first focusing on quantity, then we started focusing on quality. Now we believe that all the workers who work in our offices across the world, if they feel that there is equality, they will work maximum. And when they work maximum, we could get quality products. And because of that, we get quantity. So they said, suddenly we found out that if workers don't feel that there is equality, an environment of equality, the entire industry suffers. So we are focusing more on creating equality amongst our people and amongst everybody that we meet. An equality officer. I never thought of that. We are going into more virtual, more spiritual, more invisible things that drive us. But now, to my surprise, recently, as you have mentioned, we are making the first traditional stone temple in Abu Dhabi. And I want to really mention in public that the generosity of His Highness the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and the clarity of our Prime Minister, Honorable Sri Narendra Bhai Modi, and their friendship has resulted into this temple being possible. And the vision of His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj, who in 1997 had said that there will be a temple in Abu Dhabi, when times were much different. But when our temple, we are bringing stones from India carved into this place, and the customs, the chief of custom, when we met him, he said, Your Holiness, this is like a national project, a project for spiritual harmony, global harmony. So we want to support this from our government. And how can we support it? So they came up with a plan that will create a green custom corridor. Wherever your stones arrive, we'll bring them to the site and will completely exempt it from customs duty. So they are going out of the way to create some special facilities for the temple project because it is universal and it's bringing quality life to the country. But then they said that anytime you need anything from us, instead of contacting me, can you contact him? So I said, who is this person? He said, he's the happiness officer. Come on. I knew about quantity. I knew about quality. I knew about equality. Suddenly I'm coming to a person who is actually designated as a happiness officer. And I asked him, what's your role? He said, I have to keep you happy. I said, what do you mean you have to keep me happy? He said, so nothing is late or delayed. Everything that you say is delivered. Everything that we discuss is, crossed and dotted. And don't worry, you don't have to call me again. You just have to call me once. How beautiful the world would become if you just had to call somebody once. I think most of our time goes in reminders. To everybody, even in our family, to ourselves, you need 5 people to remind us because we have stopped trusting the people. We have stopped trusting our own selves. But forget about this happiness officer. Recently, one of our devotees who is being groomed to step in as the president of an international corporation, I don't want to reveal the name, an international corporation, a global multinational. For 2 years, the whole corporation is paying somebody to groom him to take over from the president as the next head of the entire multinational. And with him, there was this guy who was known as Frank. Frank followed him everywhere. And he's paid almost $250,000 US, Frank. So I asked this person, who's an Indian, I said, who is this Frank? He said, Swami, he's like my shadow and he's employed by our company to be with me everywhere. I said, but what is his role? He said, he's a stability secretary. I said, what? What's a stability secretary? He said, so if I'm in an argument with somebody so that I don't lose the stability of my emotions and I don't make a wrong decision for our corporation. So his role, like if I've had an argument with my wife on the phone, suddenly Frank will tell me that, hey, don't worry, it happens. This happens with everybody. Just be calm. Make sure, just leave it out. Make sure when you go into the boardroom, this is not with you. So Frank is constantly coaching him to make sure that his mind remains stable. Now I ask you, what did Lord Krishna do to Arjuna? During the Mahabharata war, every time Arjuna was confused, Lord Krishna was not just driving the chariot of Arjuna, he was actually driving the life of Arjuna. What is the Gita? What do we call spirituality? If a highly paid stability secretary who has no background of any spiritual thing, or even the mind or emotions or our heart works or the forces of spirituality, if he can advise a person to remain, now people have realized the higher you are in your position, the more stable you need to be. The more stable you need to be. One quote from a mafia boss, I think it's a very inappropriate, the quote is correct, but the context is wrong. The quote is amazing in that he says, do not hate your enemy so much that it affects your judgment. Even the bad guys want to be stable, to do the wrong things. And obviously, all of you are the right guys, the good guys who want to do good things. You have to remain stable. So if the world tells us that we need stability, but stability comes from your spiritual outlook. Now, do I need to justify is spirituality a need or a weed? Of course, it's a need. And we can see in this world, wherever we look, wherever we put our eyes, we find that spirituality is gaining grounds. After building houses after houses after houses after houses, even if we are not at peace in the houses that we create, we are turning to Vastu. Swamiji, which side should we have the room, my house, my bed? And is it the right side? Then I can have more peace. Suddenly we are bringing, infusing spirituality into architecture. Look at health. What has coronavirus taught us? That sometimes invisible things are more powerful than visible things. Simple. Sometimes things which we can't see give us more hope even in our loneliness. Prayer, spirituality became straight to the fore. Researches have come out that to boost your immunity, you need positivity. Positivity comes from hope. Hope is generated by prayer. Hope is not generated by negativity or pessimism. No. The more hopeful you are, the more prayerful you are, the more grateful you are, the more immunity you have, better you are equipped to fight any disease. Yes, medicines are important. I'm not saying they're not. All the health protocols are important, but prayer and faith and spirituality helps you. They are no longer in the margins or the footnotes. They are the main menu of human life. And I believe that the world is slowly reteaching us what we had overcome or overgrown or thought or left behind. Look at everything. Now when the world is talking about long distance and long time, space flights, when man may be put on Mars, it's not just about the moon, 2.5 days there and 2.5 days back. When they are training astronauts for longer 1 year, 2 year, or 5 year stints on space, the biggest challenge for the astronaut is not their health, but loneliness and the mind. How can an astronaut cope up with his own loneliness? And those answers only lie with the yogis of Hinduism, who went into the caves and remained lonely for hundreds of years and still came out as wonderful human beings. They are restudying meditation. They are restudying contemplation. They're all restudying everything that we call that spirituality. But let me take you something most physical, and this is very surprising, and I was a little glad about it when I read it, that whenever you have World Cup football, of course, first they just sent 11 players. Then the need of coaches became. Then the need of managers. Then the need of promoters. Can you see so many different fields are being added just to sports? Then the need of physiotherapists. Then the need of motivational thinkers. They are there. Each player will have a different motivational thinker, because the motivational thinker will not just motivate 11 players. They will individually motivate a player. A personal outlook coach for every player who'd say, hey, you did this, don't worry about the other player, don't feel jealous when you didn't score a goal. So there are personal motivators, life coaches for players. Now, first time in a few World Cups ago, Brazil brought in a priest, us sadhus, in a football game. You know why? They said, if you don't perform well, the coaches will help you. The personal coaches will tell you, the managers will tell you, the strategists will tell you how to create strategies. If you are hurt, the physiotherapists will help. But if you keep losing games, only padris can help. When you feel lost, when you lose somebody that you love, how do you answer those spiritual questions of life and death? You can't intellectually answer them. Answers. So as you see, the world is moving towards spirituality in a different way. And this has been told to us by some of the greatest thinkers of the world. Charles Steinmetz, the famous mathematician and the electric genius who created AC current so that electric current could be transmitted miles and miles across. Charles Steinmetz, who himself had once said that there is no evidence of God or spirituality or a soul or a mind in science or in nature. But as he matured in life, he said later on that if somebody asks me that what will happen in 50 years to come, quote unquote, Charles Steinmetz, he says, in 50 years to come, men and women will realize that material things do not bring happiness. And when that day comes, people will turn towards spiritual things. And when that day comes, the scientists will turn the laboratories onto the study of God and prayer. And when that day comes, we shall see more advancement in one generation than we have seen in the last 4. Charles Steinmetz says, the moment you explore spirituality, not just discuss, the moment we participate and experience spirituality, our own lives will advance 4 times better than what you are. Do you want to become more passionate? Do you want to become more peaceful? Take a leaf from Mahatma Gandhi. Even Churchill feared him and often refused to meet him, though he called him the naked fakir. And when Churchill was asked that, have you met Gandhi? He said, nope, I fear him because I feel I might change in his presence. And Gandhi often said that all that I possess in the political field is a result of my direct experience or experiments in the spiritual field. He said that I have had the bitterest experience of life in my personal life. And if the saving of my life has been done, it has because of the prayers I did. I would have been a lunatic long ago without prayer. If Mahatma Gandhi said that whatever he learned in life came from his direct experiences from the spiritual field, then you and me, can we not create a new version of ourselves with an added spiritual dimension? Of course we can. One of the greatest scientists who has put 27 American astronauts into space, it's not a small scientist, who helped 12 American astronauts walk on the moon. The father of Saturn V rockets, Dr. von Braun, he gave the final yes when in 1969, the Apollo mission took off. And when all the reporters gathered around him and said that you are one of the most creative, the force behind the space program of the US. So what were you doing when the astronauts were in space? And von Braun said that I was quietly saying prayers to actually keep himself stable. So I believe that when we understand that the practical spirituality, which is much deeper than the rites and rituals that we see, which is far more divine than just the temples that we visit, is the personal spiritual experiences that we should all create in our own lives. Without this spiritual outlook or perspective, we shall never be able to regain that stability. Let me talk about one of the greatest psychologists and psychiatrists the world has created. As Freud denied the existence of God, his perfect disciple, Carl Jung, reintroduced religion in psychiatry and psychology. Carl Jung says that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of patients have visited him, consulted him. And over 35 years, not a single patient who came to him from the developed countries of the world with a problem, their final answer was in regaining a religious outlook in life. And not one patient has been cured who did not regain a religious outlook in life. Carl Jung. When a psychologist tells you, when a scientist tells you, when a statesman tells you, when a father of our nation tells you, then why would we not really start practicing what were spiritual ideas that you have or learned from your father, or your religion that you practice? I'm not just saying Hinduism, and I'm not just saying Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, or whatever spirituality that you have gained and you can practice and make it personal will give you a deeper dimension and a greater strength. How, you'll ask me? And if you've heard of another great sportsman, Arthur Ashe, he's been an inspiration personally to me as well. And I think we've all heard about him. And I, as a young child, watched him play in Wimbledon, and the first African American to lift the Wimbledon trophy. And we were all rooting for him. As a child, I remember. And that's why it's very personal for me, that when he won, it was like a sudden liberation and an idea of equality, that yes, we could do it. Arthur Ashe was a very gentle, successful tennis player. And people loved him not just because of his success, but because of his nature. But unfortunately, in 1889, he suddenly contracted AIDS because of his couple of operations that he had for heart surgery, because of blood transfusion. And in those times, AIDS was a taboo disease. If anybody got AIDS, it was like, oh, touch me not, so scary. It was, I think, like Corona at that time. Nobody really wanted to get associated with anybody who had AIDS, and they were looked down upon. So Arthur Ashe, when one of his fans wrote a letter to Arthur Ashe saying that, Arthur, that you are one of the finest human beings and the most loved tennis player that we have. Why did God choose you for such a horrible disease? Why you? This is a question we often ask, and we defy God because of such a question. Bhagwan, why me? Why not somebody else? What wrong did I do? Every fight that you have at home or with your friends or even in your own family members, it's just me. Why me? Why not nobody else? So the answer that Arthur Ashe has written to this fan, I think all of you should have, it's a very spiritual outlook. It's not intellectual and it's not emotional, it's spiritual. You know what he writes? He writes to the fan that almost 500 million people on this earth someday touch a tennis racket. Of those 500, 50 million learn to bounce a ball at least 2-3 times. Of those 50 million, 5 million learn the rules of the game. Of those 5 million, 500,000 actually play a tennis game, sometime, even as friends or just. Of those 500,000, 50,000 play serious tennis. And of those 50,000, 5,000 play competitive professional tennis. And of those 5,000, 500 get into the professional circuit. And of those 550 get a chance to enter Wimbledon. And of those 50, only 2 reach the finals. And when I was holding the trophy, I never asked God, why me? So why should I ask God now, why me? In good times, we never ask. Why do we always ask and blame in bad times? A spiritual outlook tells you or gives you the ability to remain stable even in difficult times and doesn't allow you to go overboard even in successful times. It keeps you stable. The last incident will perhaps summarize what I wanted to say, that Dr. Kalam realized that when Pramukh Swami said, the core focus of our development should be developing a human being. I know you are covering everything in this conference, whether it's health, whether it's relationship, whether it's resources, whether it's wealth. But the foundation of all is a spiritual outlook. It gives you the feeling of your own existence in a different way. It will help you turn everything that you have. Once 2 very top doctors came to meet His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj. They were Australian. I was present in 1992. Very naturally, Pramukh Swami asked them, and I sometimes regretted, why did he ask them this? He said, do you pray? And both of them doctors smiled and said, no, we do not pray. We are not religious. Then Pramukh Swami said, but even if you're not religious, you should pray. He said, but we think we are doing God's work on this earth. Sometimes doctors have this illusion that they are God. And of course they are. When we are suffering, we only listen to them. Whatever they say would be godly to us anyway. So both of these doctors said to Swamiji, that, we don't think we need to pray to God because we are doing God's work. We are curing people, making them healthy. Then Pramukh Swami said, but when you are performing an operation, what if that operation doesn't go successful? And if you fail, then if you are praying to God, you will not go into a depression. It will give you comfort. So both doctors were so arrogant. They said, but we never fail. They said, we never fail. Then His Holiness Pramukh Swami said, well, then if you are successful every time, prayer will keep you humble, that thank God that you helped me. It will not make you arrogant. So if you fail, it will keep you stable. And if you are always successful, it will keep you able, meaning not arrogant. That's when both doctors smile. He say, okay, Your Holiness, we will attempt to pray. Pramukh Swami explained that spiritual outlook keeps you stable in times of difficulty and keeps you able, meaning humble, in times of success. And I want to ask you and leave you with this thought. The greatest proof of spirituality and you need is you yourself. Ask yourself, are you the clothes that you wear? You may look better or worse, but are you the clothes that you wear? Nope. You are a body. Are you just a body? You'll say, no, Swami, I have emotions. You can't see the emotions, but you are emotions. Are you just the emotions or are you also the thoughts? You say, no, Swami, I'm also the thoughts. Why are we all here today? Because of our thoughts. But are you just the thoughts or are you the product of your thoughts and your emotions? That means your feelings. You said, I'm feelings. That what makes you feel good or bad? What makes you feel fear or hope? What makes you see positivity even in negativity? I believe you yourself are the greatest proof that we need spirituality and we need it more now than ever. And not just because Dr. Kalam agreed with His Holiness Pramukh Swami, but you are the spiritual officer. The world may have quantity controllers, quality controllers. The world may have equality officers or happiness officers. The world may have stability secretaries, but you are your own spiritual guide. And may God and our Guru guide us all across these times and you all to add a new dimension to your life and become greater people and better people who serve the world in a better way. Thank you very much for today and lots of love and my deepest prayers. Shri Swami Narayan Bhagavan Jai.
Swamiji, Jai Swaminarayan. And it's so amazing to hear you speak. My name is Yash and I'm the National Director for Corporate Connections. And Apj Abdul and this entire kind of event with a global audience, the kind of people that we have and everything that I heard was incredible. So thank you first for coming. And I wanted to come on and just kind of seek your blessings there for everything that we're doing. And Jigar, thank you so much for putting us in touch with Swamiji and bringing him on. And Swamiji, I had a couple of questions. There's been a lot of excitement there. If you're okay, I will ask you one.
Yeah, please do.
So, Swamiji, one of the, apart from everything that we discussed, at Corporate Connections, one of our foundations is, not one of our foundations, our primary foundation is relationships. That's all we're building. And sometimes, I personally feel like we're hyper connected, like over connected, and the depth of relationships goes missing. And hence, what we do at Corporate Connections is to have a community of people that you truly thrive with, grow with. And apart from the spirituality and religion that we spoke of, I believe, and my understanding says that you personally are someone who understands relationships more than most would. The network that you have, or in general, how Swaminarayan is as a community. What is your take on building better relationships?
See, I believe relationships are not something that just grow upon you. Relationship is something that you need to grow into. Because, sometimes, most of the time, when we are trying to form relationships with anybody, we have an ulterior motive in our mind. So, of course, they can begin with an ulterior motive that you have to do some business with somebody. And I'm being very frank because I want to talk about something, how it will help. From our point of view, it's pure life and compassion to do service. And that's how our relationships grow as a Hindu sadhu or a monk. But in your life, I believe that two things are most important. Is not how much you are willing or trying to make other people adjust to you. It's how much you can adjust to your environment and other people. Naturally, relationships will grow. The second thing, when you start thinking, what's in it for me? That's when relationships start decaying.
Absolutely.
What can you give and not what can you get? For so long, we've come or we've created a society that tells us that you'll get this, think big and get rich.
Yeah.
The word get, you need to completely eradicate. In a relationship, it's all about what can you give.
Would you agree that even in our certain Hindu practices, you'll have the Yajman and the Devta, and the Yajman says Swaha, and then the Devta says Tathastu. In that kind of sense of giving and getting back in return.
In anything, I'm just trying to tell you, this was also taught to me by Dr. Kalam. I asked him when we were coming in a lift, and it was at a time when the whole India was discussing about nuclear power. Like there was this idea about holding up uranium stocks and everything in the world. I can't really remember the exact things that were being discussed. And while we were coming down in a lift after he had met His Holiness, suddenly I asked Kalam that, how can you be so energetic and so young in everything? He said, I've learned this, that if we have an idea, what can I give? If you come to a group of children, how can you leave them behind with a smile on their faces?
Right.
If you can't give anything, give a smile.
How nice.
Into your home. You come into your home, you always expect. You go down and say, what have you studied? But why can't you come into your own home and say, what can I give into that little environment? Can I turn on the light? Can I close the blinds? Can I actually keep my shoes properly? Most of your arguments are, I'm just trying to say there are small things. We major in minor things. But
Right.
if you focus on what can you give, I believe you will never fall back on relationships.
I had forgotten this line, to major in minor things. I think that's awesome. And one kind of selfish question in the community, given the kind of access that you have had around the world, Swamiji, and I think access changes perspective. And your perspective of the global business scenario is likely to be very different than what we see from where we are and then where you're seeing from a whole kind of global understanding. So the way you're seeing the world, where do you see is a shift that we as business people can kind of focus on for new enterprises, for new avenues, or for more profitable avenues?
See, I feel there are two types of business ventures that come or bud or are born. I'm not a business guy, but people come to us with so many things that they come to us for blessings. They come, and I don't just give blessings without understanding.
Right.
Because sometimes you just might bless the wrong thing and suddenly creates havoc. So I'm very clear and very focused. So there are two types of people. Some who just want a breakthrough to make money. And there are some who actually want to have a sustainable business format.
Awesome.
So there are two types of, and I believe both are important. I'm not trying to say the other is bad, because business is to create wealth. I'm not trying to say that you're opening up a spiritual people, so in your business, give everything away. No. But can you add a dimension of giving more than what you actually charge? Maybe if you're taking 100 rupees for something, then to provide that little bit more energy or more service, which does not give you or cost you much.
Yeah.
I met a very successful, I will later personally give you the name, a very successful business corporation. And as I went into that, the president or the head wanted me to do Padramni in their head office. And I said, suddenly you've grown to such a level. I said, what is the secret? You know what he told me? Amazing thing, that when I sit down to give bonus, I don't go give bonuses to people who are earning the most and things like that, but who has made the maximum difference. So then he called his liftman. Now imagine this, he called his liftman, and he said, when we sat down, that if you've had about 300 successful deals that year. And when we've asked those people that what really clinched the deal, was it our presentation? The person who made the deal. So what attracted you to us first, and what really made you sign with us? He said almost 60% of those guys said it's your liftman. And he said, why? I asked. He said, every time we come into the liftman he was so positive about everything. So we always met him first and we met him last. And we always went away with the memory of the liftman. We said, if the liftman who knows everything about this business is so positive about this business, of course, these guys are great. So he said, the maximum bonus I always give it to our liftmen.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to tell you, in the new people you are coming in, that what can you give more than what you get? I'm not saying money you should get, otherwise you will not make profit. But I believe the new world is always looking for people whom they can trust in a virtual world where trust has become an issue. So people are looking now, I met a guy who is doing product photography. And you know what his challenge is? This is again surprising. He told me that, Swamiji, I'm expert in making things look as they are. I said, most time photography was always there to make things look better. You go and take your photograph, you want yourself to look better. He said, no. Now in this new age, products are being returned back because if the colors are not reflected in the pictures and when they see the color, people send back the products. So my expertise is to bring out the truth in my picture. Can you bring out the truth in your business plan when you create a business, and the world will be yours?
Swamiji, that is awesome. So without taking further time, I know Jigar may have some questions too. So Jigar, is there anything that you'd like to pose from our members?
Swamiji, just one question which a lot of our viewers have is that in spite of people, achieving this sort of success, fame, amazing wealth, a lot of times what people feel is that internally there is always this disconnect with who they are and where they should be. So, as you were beautifully mentioning as to how spiritual outlook to everything is required, the question from the audience is that why is there a little disconnect in spite of them, having a lot of the other things? So maybe just a small suggestion or something which the viewers could.
I think this actually requires a longer answer, but in short, I would like to tell you that our scriptures have already defined 4 purusharth. Okay, they have defined 4 purusharth that human beings should do 4 purusharth. Purusharth is endeavors. So first, they say dharma, that's spirituality. The second, they say artha, meaning wealth. Our Shastras have never denied in creation of wealth. No. The wealthy will deny that you need spirituality, but the spiritual people will never deny that you need wealth. So dharma, artha. Then there is kam. Kam means desires. That you have to fulfill your desires. If you don't fulfill your desires, suddenly you feel suffocated. If you actually, if your son wants this or daughter wants this, you say, no, they'll feel you're a bad father. You have to find a balance, okay? So dharma, artha, kam, and then the 4th is moksha. Nobody really cares about moksha or liberation. They feel if I can have enough wealth and if I fulfill all my desires, who cares? Who needs God? Who needs anything else? So the beginning and the end are always dropped. Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So dharma is at the beginning, it's dropped, and moksha is dropped, and we are always wallowing in the middle. Like the midlife crisis. Okay, now I'll come back to it. The answer is very simple, but very interesting, and maybe it will give you an insight. Okay. See, however much wealth you create, your desires will always outrun your wealth. If you have a 2-room house, then you want a 4-room house. If you have a 4-room house, then you want a house in a good location. Initially, we built farmhouses. But before that, the farmers came to the city to have urban houses. For you, a holiday is to go to a beach and relax on the seashore doing nothing. For a fisherman, to come to an office to read a book is his holiday. Come on, you can look how the world works. All our holiday is a change of place, a change of activity, and a change of mindset. Okay, a change of mindset, suddenly you feel new. Okay, so now coming back to what I was saying, however much wealth you earn, your desires will always outrun. You'll want more and more and more and more. So how do you control desires? Schopenhauer had given us a figure or a formula: happiness equals H equals O divided by D. Happiness equals objects divided by desires. Keep that in mind. Is a small mathematical formula, a philosophical formula, that happiness equals objects divided by desires. Objects means wealth divided by desires. Okay? Suppose you desire 4 cakes. You want to eat 4 cakes. And you only have 4 cakes. So objects is 4 divided by 4 desires. What do you have? 1. Your happiness is 1. But suppose you have only 2 cakes and your desire is 4. Because the desire has outstripped the objects, you will half happiness. Okay? But suppose you have 1 cake and your desire is 4. Then what happens? It's 1/4. It's not about the cake, it's about the desires. But suppose you have only 1 cake and your desire is none. You'll say, "Aaj mare ek taanu che, ke mare aaj upwas che." You have no desire of eating the cake. Anything divided by 0 is infinite. So the secret lies not in having more and more success and having more and more wealth. The secret lies in reducing your desires. Simplify your life. Okay? So now coming back to the Hindu Dharma, Arth, Kam, Moksha, and let me put in a Western philosopher's idea: happiness equals objects divided by desires. Now you have Dharma, that's spirituality, which can only control desires. Artha, that's wealth. Kam is desires. So if you make your life and it's founded on spirituality, you'll be able to control your desires. And then even the smallest success will give you infinite happiness. Even no success, I'm telling you all over, success is a measurement that you and me have created. In becoming a great successful CEO, you sometimes give up becoming a great husband, a great son, a great father. Is the sacrifice enough for life? Is it necessary or is it detrimental? I'm telling you that. So spirituality gives you perspective. Spirituality will help you control your desires. And then whatever wealth you have, you'll be able to be content. There is no man as rich as a contented man, a man who is content. And then with these 3, liberation, meaning you are free of your desires. Liberation is not free of wealth. You can be the richest person, but if you are free of your possessions. Apollonius once wrote that in India, I discovered, thousands of years ago, he writes, in India, I discovered a tribe of people possessing everything, but possessed by nothing. I think we need to get back to that. Possess everything. I want India to become the richest. I want you all to become greatly successful, but do not be possessed by your success, by your wealth, or by your achievements. And that's what I believe will make you happier. I'd like to just conclude with one example, which is really close to my heart, which Pramukh Swami really told me that, once I was in Delhi, and this is a very private incident. I know this is a public forum, but the question that you asked me has just touched that chord in my heart. and I want to share it with the public at large, that, once Pramukh Swami, he called a meeting in his bedroom, Pramukh Swami Maharaj. 4 or 5 of us sadhus reached. I reached earlier. And I saw a sheaf of paper on his bed. A whole thick bunch of papers were on his bed. And I was just about to touch it. Pramukh Swami quietly said, "Ke tara kamna nathi." He told me, "Ke they are not for you." I looked from far and I saw they were in English. And I know Pramukh Swami doesn't read English. Because Swami, tamara kam nahi nathi. So very friendly, is my relationship with him. I said, "Because Swami, tamara kam nahi nathi," because they are in English. He smiled. But when I looked, I saw it was a list prepared by the Guinness Book of World Records of all the temples that Pramukh Swami had built. Okay. At that time, it was about 700. But by the time, he left this earth, he had created 1,200 temples. So Guinness Book of World Records had created 700 temples founded, made, built, and installed by Pramukh Swami. It's not like a spiritual leader and somebody else builds that and then the number is counted under his name. No, he himself did it personally. So then I took off the sheets of paper and I started questioning him. Okay, Swami, when did you build the 7th temple? When did you build the temple in Mauda? When did you consecrate the temple in Nairobi? He didn't have an answer. He couldn't remember when he built a temple and how he built a temple. The temples were there, he had built them. As I started asking, because it was a list of temples built by Pramukh Swami, very gently, Pramukh Swami told me with a smile, "Swami ye bolya, Swami ke je mandir banave, a list na banave. Ane je list banave, a mandir na banavi shake." He said, "Those who make a list can't make a mandir, and those who make mandirs don't make a list." Straight away, I threw the bunch of papers back onto this, his bed. He gave me an idea that he achieved so many things and he never created a list. We are so busy in creating our list that I gave speeches here and this is what I did. We live in the past and that's why we have no future. He never lived in the past. That's why he created a future. So I believe India was a land of people possessing everything, but possessed by nothing. We should once again achieve everything, but let achievements not hijack your personalities. Be detached to your attachments. This is a secret that even after earning so much, you'll still have a smile and a happy heart.
How beautifully put. Thank you so much, Pujya Swami Brahmaviharidas. And as we close this session, I once again sincerely thank you for being here this morning with us and taking us on a great journey of the importance of spirituality in everyone's life. Thank you so much once again, Pujya Swami Brahmaviharidas. Just wanted to mention the audience that we have a short break now. You will have an opportunity to set up any meetings that you want with other members or also visit one of the exhibitor stalls. And we will again be reconvening at 2 p.m. for the session on Forest to Finance, the journey of an ordinary man to extraordinariness. And this is going to be taken by Vineet Rai. So look forward to seeing you all over there. And thank you so much, Swami Brahmaviharidas, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.